Hello again. Welcome back to Math Class Online. We are going to start a brand new unit today all about statistics and how we get our data from different people and how we sort of organize it and represent it. And it's going to be really applicable, especially if you're like me and you're spending a bunch of time on the internet looking at like logarithmic graphs and charts and stuff about this whole pandemic that we're all experiencing. So hopefully it'll be an interesting unit, and I will try to make as much as possible explanatory videos. But if you don't want to listen to me, I'm also giving you the notes just written down. Okay, here we go. All right, so this unit, which I will call statistics, we've got a couple goals. So today's big goal is going to be to determine if a survey will lead to valid results or if it will be biased based on a couple influencing factors, which we will go over. There are a bunch of other goals here, and these are going to be for a later lesson, so we'll understand how stuff or how we collect data. We'll look at the validity of data collected. We'll be able to analyze graphs and figure out if they're misleading or not. But for today, influencing factors. So before we talk about influencing factors, I need you to sort of know a bunch of definitions. They're common words which you might already know, but we're just going to make sure that we're all on the same page about what it is that we're talking about when we say these words. So first up is population. So the population is every single individual in whatever group you're studying. So you need to define your population. Say, I want to study the residents of the city of Richmond. That's my population. So every single person who lives in Richmond would be my population. Or I could say my population is every grade 9 student at McMath. That makes sense? Whereas a sample is a selection of individuals from a group. So it's most of the time impossible to actually ask every single person in a population unless the population is quite small. So oftentimes we use a sample. So we select a bunch of people from a specific group to ask the question, and then we extrapolate that information to the whole group. So a sample could be like, I don't know, just one class at McMath. That would be a sample of the population, everybody who goes to McMath school. All right, next up is a survey. So a survey is a general word that we use. It's however you go about collecting the data. So it could be like a checklist, it could be a rating system, it could be a series of questions, and it could be someone calling on the phone, emailing a survey, asking questions in person, whatever. Bias is a word you should already know. So bias is a preference for a specific product, person, group, whatever, as compared to another. It's the same as bias like in your English class or whatever. And then finally, this is the new thing we're really focusing on today, so influencing factors. So when you write a question, when you do a survey, there's a bunch of things that could influence the way that people answer. And so here is a list of some of those things. So the way you word the question or the use of language. So if you word it in a confusing way or if you word it in a way that gives bias for one answer over the other, then you might be making your data that you collect not valid. The next one is ethics. So ethics generally is the idea that like you don't want to do things that are morally ambiguous. So one of the main problems with ethical questions are ones where you're going to profit from the answer. So if you're going to make money based on the survey, it might be ethically not so good. Next up is privacy concerns. So any question that you ask people that they would like to keep that information private is going to cause some problems. So if you ask people, say, about their weight or how much money they make or anything really, like their religious backgrounds, whatever. Next up is the cost or the time to do the survey. So some surveys might cost you a bunch of money, like if you need to use postage or like sending stuff in the mail, or they might take a whole bunch of time, and that's going to influence how valid your data is. Next up is cultural sensitivity. So there are some questions which are biased against or for certain cultures. So you just want to take care to really think about your question and whether or not it's culturally biased. The next one is the timing of the survey. So that's like the moment in time that you ask these questions to people. It might influence how they answer. So an example might be like if you ask it a question on the very hottest day of summer, what's your favorite drink, hot chocolate or iced tea? Then people are more likely to answer iced tea because it's really hot outside. All right, and then lastly, if we can't really think of one of those specific things, you could just think generally about bias. So if you look at a question and you know what answer the asker is looking for, then they probably have bias. So you just want to be careful of bias. Okay, so we are going to try to think of those different influencing factors. And if you wanted them in more detail, I have attached the PDF, which is of all of the influencing factors from your textbook with some specifics and examples, and you can read that over at your leisure. But now we will play which influencing factor is it? So I'm going to show you a question, all the influencing factors, and you are going to yell at your computer screen which one you think it is. All right, so on a hot sunny day in June, teenagers were surveyed to find out how they feel about the city building a new outdoor skating rink. What might be the influencing factor in that survey? Yell it at your screen. So timing is the answer here. Obviously, in hot summer days of June, you don't really think about outdoor skating. It's just a weird time. All right. In an anonymous survey, students were asked, do you agree that everyone should become a vegetarian? So what, and it could be more than one, might be a problem factor or an influencing factor? So there's a couple here, I would say. Use of language, because it is an awkward way to say that. Do you agree? Like, people are gonna want to say yes. But also bias, because you know what they want you to answer before, like, in the question. So it's a bias towards vegetarianism in this case. All right, next. Brock asked his classmates the following question. Don't you think apartment buildings should allow residents to have cats? So what might be a influencing factor in this question? And again, it's kind of like the last one. Mostly, I would say use of language. It's an awkwardly worded question, but also bias, because we for sure know Brock wants cats in the building by the way he worded the question. All right, next up. Maria asked everyone in her class what chocolate bar they liked best. Then before her next test, she gave her teacher the chocolate bar he said he'd like best. What's the main influencing factor with Maria's survey? This one's a little bit tricky, but it's ethics. So Maria is benefiting from the survey by bribing her teacher. So it's ethically sort of not a really great thing to do, and that makes this the influencing factor here, ethics. All right. Omar asked his classmates, what do you prefer for breakfast, ham, bacon, or pork sausages? What might be one of the influencing factors in this survey? So the nice thing is that we know that, like, we don't know which one of those three he wants, but the problem is that they're all pork products. So cultural sensitivity, it is maybe not super culturally appropriate to ask people what their favorite food is and then only give them a specific types of food to choose from, especially with pork, which in more than one culture is not a thing that people eat. All right, a government survey asked Canadian households what brand of detergent they most used. Then the data was collected and sold to the top detergent company. So the important factor here is that the collected data was sold, which means that somebody made a profit. And so that is ethically not so good. It might also be privacy. If people are asking you a question and then they're selling it to someone, that's not great for privacy. All right, Lucy wants all grade 9 students to take a 45-minute survey to find out what kind of interest there are in her club. So the thing here is that 45 minutes for every grade 9 student is going to take you way too much time. So she's probably not going to be able to get everybody to answer her because nobody wants to sit there and talk to you for 45 minutes. Lucy? Brandon wanted to collect information on students' television viewing habits, so he mailed a questionnaire along with a self-addressed stamped envelope to 300 students. So if you're mailing stuff and you're giving them self-addressed stamped envelopes, you're going to spend like $3 or $4 per person or more. So cost. It'll cost a lot of money to do that. Brandon's got lots of money. All right. Liv suspects that many Canadian teenagers are overweight, so she plans to ask 100 teenagers in Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Halifax the following question: do you diet, exercise, or both to avoid becoming overweight? So the one glaring thing right here immediately, at least for me, is privacy. Nobody really wants to talk to you about their weight. But also the way she's worded it is quite awkward. What if I do none of those things to avoid becoming overweight? Liv? Okay, and that's that. So now your homework is going to be to go onto that Crowdmark site, and there are 4 questions up there. They're like a couple parters. So you just want to write down your answers on paper, take a picture, and upload it to that site. If you are having a hard time figuring out how this whole Crowdmark thing works, email me and I will try to walk you through it somehow. Otherwise, I look forward to your answers, and until next week.